No, man, I know. But Phillip Braverman did win game number 1 over Andrejs Prost, Blue-Red Miracles versus Blue-White Miracles.
And like I mentioned before, I like Phillip's matchup here in the mirror match. Yeah, I believe he has a marginal edge. He has Vendilion, Click, and Snapcaster Mage in game 1. Those are very powerful tools to have. And then access to Red Elemental Blast and Pyro Blast in the post-board games, also quite good.
We're underway here in game number 2 between Prost and Braverman. Just an island here for Andrejs to get things started. Not a lot of action to start things off, as here is a Volcanic Island. Don't forget, both players do have access to deck lists, so Prost knows that, hey, he's got a bit of a red splash here for some blasts as he's going to play an Arid Mesa and pass the turn back.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ease in this matchup on Phillip's side, in part because, again, he knows the deck lists are public. He doesn't have to worry about Wasteland. That contorts the way that he wants to fetch for lands in some cases. Here, he is free to get whatever his heart contends.
Misty Rainforest. There for Braverman. Before Andrejs Prost takes his turn, looks like he's going to cast a Brainstorm. See, he's got a counterbalance, a couple Spell Pierces, a Jace over there. So a bunch of options here for Andrejs.
And you can see the jockeying is already beginning. Phillip, with counterbalance in hand, elects not to deploy it in the face of a potential Spell Pierce.
It just kind of makes you wonder exactly how important is that card in this particular matchup.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic with Spell Pierce, particularly because it's a card that is a powerful defensive tool early on in the game, but diminishes in value. So both players are making concessions to play around it early in the game, but they also need to cash it in for good value at some point because it's not going to be good forever.
Spell Pierce will take care of that Brainstorm. You see Prost is going to sacrifice Arid Mesa. He's going to go digging for a land. He played Scalding Tarn first. Going to get the old Tundra out of the deck, go down to 19, and we'll see exactly what he wants to do this turn. I assume we're going to see a counterbalance placed onto the stack.
Yeah, after Phillip plays one copy of Spell Pierce, I think Andrejs is willing to pick a spot here to try to land counterbalance. It's pretty huge upside if he's able to get a resolve. And he also has a Spell Pierce to fight over it as well.
I was going to say, especially when he does have his own Spell Pierce. So here is a counterbalance. And will that be good to go here for Prost?
Now, Prost without the other piece of the puzzle, but counterbalance still puts enormous pressure on the other deck.
Yeah. It's also super volatile. You know, your spell can just get countered, which is obviously frustrating. So Braverman's going to take a draw here. It's a copy of Scalding Tarn.
I'm curious to see if Phillip is also going to try to land his counterbalance here. He certainly can't wait, and in part because there's the chance of his counterbalance getting locked out here if Andrejs is able to find Divining Top.
He doesn't even attempt to play it, just going to pass the turn back. So Prost will take a draw. It's a copy of Counter Spell.
Well, good thing he didn't go for it there because there was a counter spell on top.
Would have been pretty unfortunate for Braverman, who is going to sacrifice this Misty Rainforest.
And I think, you know, you see Jace the Mind Sculptor in Andrejs' hand. I think he's happy just to sit on his hand for a while. He's got a Spell Pierce and a counter spell. And in the face of a counterbalance, it's very hard for Phillip to initiate the action. So I think that Andrejs is happy to just draw, make his land drops. If he finds a Divining Top or a Trinket Mage, that's great, but he's not going to rush anything as he has a huge edge right now, and the easiest way for him to lose that edge is by getting too proactive.
We have Vendilion Click. We have a counterbalance trigger in the stack. That's a Sensei's Divining Top. And this is a counterspell.
Well, now Phillip really has to get a move on here. I'm not sure what he plans for next turn, but it's got to be something good because Sensei's Divining Top is looming.
Yeah, it's got to be a pretty bad feeling knowing, that the top is on top of the deck, and I need to actually get this show on the road. Braverman going to draw a card here. You see, he's got the counterbalance, and I believe a Brainstorm in his hand right now. Of course, can't cast the Brainstorm because he knows that there's a 1 on top of Prost's deck and Sensei's Divining Top. Looks like he's going to lead with an Arid Mesa. Here's 2 mana. This is a copy of Counterbalance. Prost could Spell Pierce this to just try to bottleneck some mana. I'm not sure that's the best use of the card. He also does have 2 copies of Spell Pierce in his hand. He can only cast 1, obviously, because there's a Plains untapped. And in order to cast the other one, he would have to sacrifice the Scalding Tarn. So
yeah, this is what I was speaking to a little bit about these Spell Pierces. They are good early on at protecting and forcing through things, but they diminish in value. And this is also a place where Phillip, having a less basic land-heavy version of the build as an edge, when there's no threat of Wasteland or Price of Progress or some such thing, then you know, he can get a bunch of dual lands and be able to cast multiple blue spells in a turn.
Ooh.
Andrejs here with the Plains.
So you saw Braverman is going to cast Brainstorm in response to the top being placed onto the stack. So the counterbalance for Prost resolved It revealed a top. It countered the Brainstorm. Then Braverman flips over his counterbalance. It shows a Caracas. So now Andrejs' top looks like it's in and good to go. So a very timely reveal there for the player on the left.
And if Andrejs wasn't content to sit on his hands before, I think he certainly is now. Fetch line in play, top counterbalance. No reason to walk in any of Phillip's tricks if he can avoid it.
He can take his sweet time now. He's kind of got the soft lock enabled. He's got a Jace in his hand. If he's able to slide that into play, life is pretty good. And Braverman's hand right now is pretty weak as well. I think there's just a couple of lands in his hand.
Now, Braverman does have one copy of Disenchant in his sideboard alongside one copy of Fencer. His other ways to remove that counterbalance from the table are Red Elemental Blast. He obviously can't do that in the face of the Sensei's Divining Top. So he does have a couple ways to break out of this, but it will be a challenge.
Scalding Tarn going to come away for Braverman. The way he drew his card made me believe that it might be Entreat the Angels, but it was not. You see, Prost is going to spin his top, consult his hand of double Spell Pierce and Jace.
And there's a counterspell on top and that's critical for a couple reasons. One is, of course, having counterspell in this kind of matchup is a very powerful tool. Secondly, he can float a 2 on top and no longer have to worry about something like Disenchant breaking out of the hold.
Prost just draws his card and passes the turn back. Going to float that 2 over there. Braverman's going to take a draw. Couldn't quite make out what it was. May have been a red card. We know he has a couple of those in his sideboard. Looks like he's just going to play an island here and pass the turn back over to Prost. Prost is going to play this newly drawn Vendilion Click.
And I would be surprised if Andrejs really fights too heavily over this and if it involves sacrificing his Scalding Tarn, because the top of his deck is so loaded right now.
Counterbalance trigger looks like it's going to be placed on for Braverman. And now he's going to reveal, and that's an island, so that's no good. And I think what Prost is actually doing here is he's trying to get as much information as he can, because I think he's more than willing to get this countered or something of that nature, see what's in Braverman's hand if it does resolve, and then try to land the Jace.
Yeah, Jace with top plus counterbalance in the mirror matches as close to a stranglehold as you're going to find. So if this Vendilion Click resolves, that's great. You get some information, that's great too. If not, you know, that's one less counterspell that he has to worry about. He might be able to clear a path for Jace.
The card on top of Braverman's deck now is a mystery. It was an island before, but he sacrificed the Scalding Tarn, took 1, and now it's a mystery card. Now, of course, the counterbalance is already resolved on the Vendilion Click. It missed, so it can't trigger again. But now here's the grip. Snapcaster Mage, Pyroblast, and a mystery. And an island, excuse me.
And that Snapcaster Mage not providing a lot of value here, as well as Phillip's graveyard. Again, 1 casting cost spells he cannot cast through this counterbalance and Divining Top.
Snapcaster Mage has got a little bit of utility here in the graveyard.
It wouldn't surprise me here if Andrejs says, all right, you just keep these.
I wouldn't be surprised either. And it looks like that's what he's going to do. Going to spin the top first here. Looks like he probably still wants to float that 2 around. Got Disenchant in there now. Says this is the card I'm going to draw. It's a copy of Counterspell. In for 3 we go.
Counterspell, of course, a great insurance policy here to have as well.
One thing about Prost, if you've never seen him play before, he plays very, very quickly and decisively. As Braverman's going to play an island, pass the turn back. Prost is going to spin the top again.
And this is not a matchup where it's easy to play at the most efficient pace.
Yeah.
A lot of small operations, a lot of things you're playing around, but Prost's pace of play has been great.
Yeah, it's got a lot to do with the fact that he just plays a lot of Magic online. He's very, very experienced. Again, 2-time Pro Tour top 8 competitor as well.
The Baconator, as I believe he is known.
That's a Baconator 5,000 to you. Make sure you get that right in the future.
Sorry.
I'll accept your apology this time.
I meant no disrespect.
We might see. We have a counterbalance placed on the stack. But first things first, it's going to be counterspell targeting. That Jace the Mind Sculptor. So now, Braverman's counterbalance is going to reveal a counterspell. All right, how do you like it?
Okay. Got a little something to work with.
Yeah. So now that counterbalance is going to get flipped back down. Again, 2 on top of the deck. Prost has that information now. Now he has to decide what he wants to do.
He could try to spin top here and try to find a 4 to float on this Jace, but tapping a mana here means that he runs a risk if he misses and then decides to force a will, that Spell Pierce now forces the Jace through. So he wants to keep 2 mana up through the sequence if he can at all afford it.
Don't forget, he knows that he has a Disenchant and I believe, another 1-drop on top of his deck. So how he stacked them is the big question. Also, in this situation, he knows the Braverman's 2 cards. So can't forget about that either. He knows that Braverman has Snapcaster Mage and Red Blast in his hand. So there could be some creative floating that took place here. And don't forget, throughout all of this, there is a counterbalance trigger on Prost's side with the Jace the Mind Sculptor. So Force gets the job done on the Jace. And Braverman can only pass the turn back. Prost is going to spin now. See a Relic, a Disenchant, and a Top.
And Relic in Andrejs' deck here, as he does not have access to Snapcaster Mage, but Phillip does. So, and it can always cycle, so a reasonable extra card to have in the deck.
Quickly search for 3. Gonna play the Relic. He knows again the top card of Braverman's deck is a counterspell, so that is safe, and Braverman's just gonna quickly untap. And he's gonna draw that copy of counterspell.
I'm curious to see if Phillip has any real outs to this Vendilion Click. He may have removed Source of Plowshares altogether. Certainly Intrigue might be able to power him through this, but I would be surprised if he has much in the way of spot removal.
Yeah, because we know the Red Blast isn't gonna resolve, unless Andrejs wants it to. Because he's got top plus counterbalance in play, and we know that he's floating some 1s down there. He's got a top down there, of course. He drew the Relic, and then he also has a Disenchant hanging out within those top 3 cards. He's going to spin the top yet again. We'll see what the 3rd card is. Don't get a great look at it. But it looks like, okay, it's another copy of Vendilion Click. So Prost is going to untap. He's going to draw his card. It's a copy of top. He's going to come in for 3 yet again. It's going to put Braverman down to 5. And now Prost is just going to pass the turn back. As you mentioned, can Braverman get out from underneath this lock? Because the funny thing here, Patrick, is that throughout all of this, Prost isn't playing any lands. I'm sure he could use a little bit extra mana.
Oh, for sure. It's actually pretty incredible to watch Andrejs navigate through this game with 4 lands versus, close to 7 or 8 here on Phillip's side, as lands are so critical in the control mirror match. But Divining Top Counterbalance has a way of kind of dwarfing anything else that's going on.
Time to spin yet again. I see Force of Will in there along with Vendilion Click and Disenchant. Prost going to activate Relic of Progenitus now. Says, let's get rid of some graveyards if that's okay with you. We'll see if this is going to buy out some sort of response, because now Prost is a little low on mana.
Yeah, this is something where, Phillip can play the Snapcaster Mage, target the Brainstorm. If Andrejs tries to respond by putting top on top of his deck, he may be able to Pyroblast either the Counterbalance or the Vendilion Click.
So the Red Blast is actually going to go over towards the Counterbalance and not the Vendilion Click. Thought processes here is I need to get this thing out of the way first before I can do anything else.
Right, and once Counterbalance is off the table, then your Snapcaster Mage becomes an incredible tool.
So did Prost maybe move a little bit early there with the activation of the Relic? That's the big question. Maybe did he want to force this action? Going to spin here. Or at least attempt to spin.
And all these responses are just so critical. Because if you slip up at any point, either something's going to die or your spell is going to get countered that you were anticipating.
So the spin's going to resolve. 1, 2, and 3. You see the V-click. There's the Force and the Disenchant. So it looks like he wants the 2-mana spell on top of his deck. But maybe not. Maybe he wants the Force of Will on top of his deck.
Yeah, Force of Will might be an invaluable insurance policy to have in his hand in case something really strange happens.
Now he says, activate top. And Braverman says, I have a response. Counterbalance trigger. Prost now has to sacrifice a Scalding Tarn. So it looks like he may have gotten himself in a little bit of hot water here.
Well, he gets a fresh spin with the top again.
Yep.
And the top of his deck wasn't offering him a ton of help here.
He probably has to spike a 2 to get him out of this, I think. We'll see. Snapcaster Mage on the stack right now. And remember, all of this is just simply in response to, that Relic of Progenitus activation.
All Andrejs was trying to do was draw a card so he could find a land. Yeah. That's all he was trying to do.
Right. Just leave me alone, man.
Just leave me alone.
All right, 3 cards. 1, 2. Not quite sure what that 3rd card is.
I believe it's Engineered Explosives?
Yeah, I think you're right. So it looks like Braverman may have actually worked his way out of this. So Snapcaster Mage is going to resolve. Snapcaster Mage is going to allow a Brainstorm. So 1 is Flooded Strand. 2 is Jace the Mind Sculptor. 3 is a Plains. Interesting.
It's not clear to me how much Phillip has actually worked his way out of this, all told, because all this is allowing him to do is resolve a Brainstorm. I mean, all he's doing is looking at some cards here.
Yeah. all Andrejs is doing is drawing a card. With
Yeah,
the relic.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like Phillips has set up something big here, but all he's been able to do is set up getting a Snapcaster in play and resolving a Brainstorm.
Yeah. You see Phillip and Andrejs having a little bit of conversation. I'm sure they're wondering, wait, whose turn is this again?
Where are we?
Yeah, where are you in the game? Okay, so they're going to clean up the stack here a little bit. So Top's going to go on top. There's that. So now that's going to counter that. Yeah, and so now this is going to happen. Look at all this nonsense. Jeez. All right, now he gets to draw his top again from the relic. Now he gets to untap. Now he gets to draw this card, which is the engineered explosives. And if he wants to set EE on 2, he could do that. It would blow up his own counterbalance, of course. That was fun.
Yeah, a lot of setup.
Yeah. Now I'll just attack for 3. Put you down to 2.
Ultimately, the board looks roughly the same.
Yeah.
But there were some fireworks.
Now, one thing to keep in mind on Braverman's side, for his Brainstorm, he actually put a Jace the Mind Sculptor on top. And so now here's a Jace. Trigger. Oops. Counter your Jace. So now Prost has to put that to the bin. And now the big question here is, can Jace the Mind Sculptor get Braverman back into this game? Prost is going to sacrifice a fetch land. He's going to go down to 16. See what land he wants to search up here. It's going to be a volcanic island. And will he cast a Sensei's Divining Top? And does he know about the counterspell that's in Braverman's hand? I'm fairly sure that he does know about that information. More importantly, will Braverman counter it? I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Yeah, so he's going to counter that. Trigger. Force of Will. See ya. All right, Phil Braverman.
I mean, Andrejs is tapped out. He doesn't have an opportunity to redeploy his Vendilion Click this turn. So Jace unsummoning the Vendilion Click, worst comes to worst, means that Phillip can try to find an actual long-term answer to this Vendilion Click and start rallying.
For you Miracles fan out there, Dustin Biggers has won game number 1 over Kevin Jones. So Blue-White Miracles up a game over Esper Deathblade in our 3 versus 6 match. And for Michael Majors and Michael Braverman, Blue-White Red Delver versus Bug Delver, they're going to game number 3. Winner of that match, again, playing Dylan Donegan, who dispatched Todd Anderson very quickly with his Bug Delver deck.
Yeah, just great draws by Dylan and some pretty poor ones from Todd.
Yeah. All right, well, is it Jace time? Again, Braverman working with some pretty good information right now. He knows the top of Andrejs' deck is a copy of Force of Will. Andrejs has had those Spell Pierces in his hand for a little while. He's also got an Engineer Explosives and then another top. So now is a perfect time to slide into Jace. The question is, will he pull the trigger on it? And it looks like he's finally going to do that. He's going to play a Flooded Strand now. Here is Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to find a better spot than this, and Phillip is facing lethal next turn, so
Yeah.
Here we go.
He's going to... Ooh. Interesting. Sacrificing Flooded Strand right now, going to go down to 1.
It's still, I mean, he has some information about what these cards are because of the Brainstorm that he was able to resolve last turn.
Yeah.
Do you think he's actually trying to find a way to kill this Vendilion Click?
I think that's what he's... Yeah, that's what I think that's what he's doing, because by sacrificing here, that implies that, okay, I don't want the top card. I want to see 3 fresh ones as opposed to 2. And that means that he's going to try... It seems like that means he's going to try to actually kill it as opposed to just bouncing it for the turn temporarily.
I mean, it's a gutsy play, but it's definitely high upside here, as, you know, we know that the top card of Andrejs' deck is a Force of Will. In the event that he finds a 1-caster, he has to assume it's safe. It's not going to get counterbalanced.
All right. Jace, how am I going to use you? It's going to be Brainstorm, so here's 1.
Going big.
And 2. And 3. Counterspell Caracas, Red Blast. Now don't forget,
Wow.
He's already played a land for the turn, so cannot play Caracas, but Red Blast will get the job done.
Yeah, Red Blast is good here.
And having a counterspell to counter the next spell is really important too. Also, he can set his library in a certain way for the counterbalance he has in play, but I think he'd rather have the counterspell in his hand than actually on top of his deck.
Yes.
Volcanic Island, actually going to get some use of the red mana for once. Fire that thing out of the sky.
This is an incredible rally. I mean, Phillips turned this game around.
And now he even gets to attack with Snapcaster Mage. Pro's going to go down to 14.
I mean, not only has he turned this game around, but he is way ahead.
Yeah, he's the one with the active Jace here. Pro's going to draw a Force of Will, which Braverman did know about. So you see Prost's hand over there. Don't forget, his Jace got countered already. So Prost is not working with a ton over here. This is going to be 3 mana, it looks like. See what he's going to cast here. Looks like it's going to be an engineered explosives.
Explosives for 3.
So with this, yeah, this is going to be this might actually, because of the alternate casting cost, this might be an explosives for 2. Because what he can do is he can actually tap 3 mana for this with blue for the volcanic, blue from the island, and then planes for the actual planes. That'll be Sunburst 2, casting cost 3. It's a unique way to get around counterbalance.
Oh, sure.
I know this from the actual one time I played counterbalance in a tournament. Jerry made me or we weren't going to be friends anymore.
That's fancy.
Yeah, I got 9th. So. Oh, what a surprise. Jerry was right. What a real shockaroo. Jerry was right about that. Caracas the draw. Now you're going to see a Jace activation. It's going to be a mountain. There's a flooded strand. And then a Vendilion Click.
And that Vendilion Click is another way for Phillip to leverage his advantage here. If Andrejs decides to blow up this engineered explosives for 2, counterbalance is no longer a factor, and now Phillip can just start deploying all the extra cards he's drawing.
Yeah, now he's going to play that Caracas. He's going to attack here for 2. Prost is going to go down to 12. Of course, the Caracas can protect the Vendilion Click that Braverman has, so actually Braverman can do a pretty decent job of controlling Prost's draw step, potentially. But Prost says, let's get these things off of the table. So, explosives will get the job done. And now, all Prost has to beat is Jace. What's the big deal?
Yeah, no, I mean, Phillip is really, I mean, this is an incredible rally.
Yeah, here's a top. And this is a Vendilion Click, maybe? Yes, it looks like it's going to be. So here's a click, likely in response to the top. And I think what he wants to do here is see that maybe the coast is clear for me to counterspell this top.
Yeah, because if he's able to counterspell the top, then he can really start working on Faith Sealing.
Yep.
It's not a line you can really take once the top is in play because Andrejs has too much control over what you're seeing, and then what he can reset the draw no matter what you do.
Yep.
But
And I kind of like this play here. Forcible removing the Spell Pierce instead of actually casting it so he doesn't run into a Spell Pierce of his own. At this point, that Spell Pierce is doing actual nothing for Prost. The only reason I think he would want to actually keep that is here is a counterspell on the top. The only reason I think he'd actually want to keep that Spell Pierce is in case he draws a Brainstorm to actually shuffle it away.
yeah. And now, you know, after counterspelling this top, we might be able to move on to phase 2 with Jace here with Phillip at 1.
Is it time to Brainstorm or is it time to Fate Seal for Team Braverman? He says, you know what, I'll Brainstorm. Flooded Strand. Sensei's Divining Top. Stoneforged Mystic.
I was about to say it's going to be really hard for Phillip to shuffle his deck at 1 life, but if you're going to find a way to shuffle your deck, this is not a bad one.
There's your Stoneforge. Trigger, it's time to go hunting. I think it might be Batterskull time.
Seems like a good spot.
There it is.
Again, Andrejs, no cards in hand. Phillip can do whatever he wants from here.
I think in this situation, too, he just hardcasts the Batterskull.
Oh, yeah.
No reason to get all fancy. Your opponent doesn't have any cards in their hand. 2, 5. Give me a Batterskull right now. Germ token incoming. And Prost is going to get to untap. He gets to take a draw. Ooh, okay. Okay. Terminus is okay. I thought maybe it was an entreat. Yeah, I thought maybe it was an entreat for a second there. But Terminus is going to take care of the Germ token, and Stoneforge Mystic is going to go to the bottom. But now he can actually pick up the Batterskull and redeploy. And again, now is it again time to Brainstorm? Is it time to Fate Seal?
I want to start Fate Sealing. I really want to start Fate Sealing if I'm in Phillip's seat.
I would be really scared of Entreating and just rolling off the top because that probably wins the game for Prost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he is going to Fate Seal.
Because all you need to do is stop 1 draw, really.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
You know, you get to connect with Batterskull once, maybe twice, and you pull yourself out of range.
Here's Batterskull yet again. So there's your Germ token. Follow up here is a Sensei's Divining Top there for Braverman. He passes it back over to Prost. Prost is going to draw a card. This is another copy of Terminus, which Braverman let him keep. So now Braverman's going to spin his top. He's okay. There's a Brainstorm. There was a copy of Pyroblast. And now he's going to return this. So now Braverman is really starting to get his clutches on this game.
Yeah. And Phillip was happy to leave Terminus on top of the deck. It's basically like a free +2 on a Jace.
Yeah.
Just resets the turn.
Top card here. top or bottom is the question.
Brainstorm, I think that I would leave. With a Pyroblast in hand, I suspect that I would have left on top, but I can also respect putting it on the bottom.
5 mana. In just a moment here for Braverman. That is a Batter Skull yet again. Third time might be the charm as he does pass it back over to Prost. Is it Entreat the Angels? It is not. It is nothing. He passes the turn back over to Braverman. Braverman's going to untap that stack of lands. He'll take a draw. And for a game that was going so well for Prost, now it's getting very ugly. In comes the Batter Skull. Braverman's going to push himself up to a more comfortable 5. Prost is going to go down to 7. You saw Braverman's draw for the turn was a Force of Will. He's got a Pyroblast in his hand. He's got a top in play. Jace is fate sealing Prost with his hand saying, I'm pretty much helpless. Puts a top card to the bottom.
And that Force of Will, I believe, locks it up.
Yeah, I think that may be the check mark.
Effectively 2 counterspells in hand.
Looks like we're going to see a Ponder here from Braverman. Pro shrugs his shoulders, says, not much I can do about that. You see a Brainstorm among the cards, along with the Flutter Strand, another Sensei's top. He's going to shuffle these away, knowing that he can do a little bit better than that, even though he doesn't need to do much better.
Yeah. And he sort of incentivized to shuffle no matter what because of the Divining Top in play.
Yep.
So even if it was close, I like shuffling here.
Mystery card is an island. He will play that for the turn, and he will just simply pass the turn back. Prost is going to draw a card. It's a mystery card. It does not look to be all that good of one. Looks like it may be another copy of Engineered Explosives.
And Andrejs trying to figure out if there's any way for him to proceed from here. The spread of permanence, unfortunately, right now is also 0, 5, and 4 in terms of the things that are killing him. So
that's going to be for 0, and Braverman says, that's fine. You know, Braverman could have Force of Willed that, but he's just like, you know, there's no need for me to do that. I can just play and reset my Batter Skull and not have to worry about a thing.
And also, again, Jace a pretty effective backup plan.
It's not so bad. Here's an attack. Prost deciding right now if he wants to blow up that Engineered Explosives now or later. He says now is good. I did not want to take any more damage. So there goes your Germ Token. Jace moving up to 11. That card's going to stay. Pass the turn back. You see Venser in Braverman's hand now. There's a Tundra passing the turn back. Braverman going to spin top here. You see a Brainstorm ×2 and a Flooded Strand. Looks like he's happy with what he sees. Maybe he's going to fire off old Venstar here.
I mean, with Prost at 7, it plus Batter Skull still isn't lethal, so he might as well leave it in his hand.
Yeah. Can't forget that Venser, along with Caracas, is quite the combo, as Jace is going to tick up. This is a Terminus. That's a brick. And that is going to do it. Phillip Braverman, all the way down to 1 life, but gets the job done. Team Braverman is moving on to the semifinals. Blue White Red Miracles getting it done.
That was an incredible comeback. I thought Prost had that one locked up.